Another episode of The Bad Batch is out, and it's everything we could have hoped for. Per usual, there will be spoilers for the episode in this video, so if you haven't seen the episode yet, go do so. That's an order, trooper. Last night, we got to see everyone's favorite clone deserter again for the first time in over a decade. In his triumphant return, Cutler Quain was mainly concerned with packing up his life and moving somewhere else with his family, as the Empire was tightening its grip on Seleucami, a former separatist stronghold. He was ultimately successful thanks to the efforts of Bad Batch. Miraculously, only one clone recognized him as a potential deserter, and he managed to get on the first shuttle to a better world without much incident. But this begs a bit of an unpleasant question. How the heck did he manage to pull this off? Why are all the other clones suddenly dumber? And does it have something to do with those inhibitor chips? We'll be answering all these questions in today's video.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
The Bad Batch has been rife with implications that the inhibitor chips didn't just force clones to carry out one order, but they actively changed their attitudes and personalities. In the first episode of this series, we saw that the clones have adopted a bit of a sour attitude and that they're much more open to the Empire than they apparently otherwise would have been. In this episode, we saw clones get fooled just as easily as, weeks earlier, they might have fooled simple battle droids. Did their ingenuity or intelligence get hit by the chips as well? Exactly how much did Order 66 change? Well, firstly, we need to keep in mind that inhibitor chips don't just flip switches that magically turn clones into stormtroopers. They don't erase personality traits or anything like that. Rather, they selectively accentuate them. When Order 66 was given, for example, the chips didn't just make clones want to kill Jedi. Instead, they intensified the natural tendency to follow orders that the clones had been programmed with, together with their programmed loyalty to the Republic. We can see this clearly in how Rex responded to the order. While he ultimately executed it, or tried to execute it, he was clearly struggling to do so, due to his attachment to Ahsoka. Clearly then, his personality wasn't overwritten outright. We can actually see a good example of how this worked in the case of Crosshair from the last Bad Batch episode. Crosshair wasn't just trying to blindly execute Order 66, he was trying to rationalize the whole thing as well. His chosen rationale was that orders are orders and that good soldiers follow orders, which is, of course, what the chips were intended to make him think. Unlike with Tup, however, that idea wasn't just a directive that the chips forced him to follow. Rather, it became part of Crosshair's regular thought process, as we saw later in the episode on Onderon. The inclination to follow orders was something that was part of Crosshair all along, as with all other clones. After all, the Kaminoans engineered the clones to be obedient, as Lama Su outright told Obi-Wan Kenobi. The chips just made that urge stronger and pushed clones to rationalize their obedience in their own ways. The same is likely true for the other changes to the clones that we saw in the first episode. Their sudden loyalty to the Empire was due to the increase in loyalty that came with Order 66, for example. As for why all clones suddenly got grouchy, we'd bet that it was just a symptom of the whole good soldiers follow orders line. Following Order 66, the clones would take their duties far more seriously as part of their greater commitment to order and obedience. Essentially, they would all become like Commander Faye. The chips clearly haven't erased the clones' personalities entirely. Off-duty, their senses of humor are mostly intact, as displayed by the Reg's absolutely pathetic attempt at making fun of the Bad Batch in the mess hall. While we'd like to credit the terribleness of the whole Sad Batch pun to the chips as well, we fear that's likely just clones with a lame sense of humor. But what about the Seleucami garrison? Could the chips have somehow nerfed the intelligence of our poor clone stormtroopers? Probably not. We're gonna have to live with the reality that the writers of the Bad Batch are gonna make the clones dumber than they were in the Clone Wars, by token of them being the bad guys now, without much of a law reason to do so. It's probably just a classic case of selection bias. In all likelihood, it was always this easy to fool clones like that for characters with the proper amount of plot armor. We just never saw it in the Clone Wars because those weren't the stories being told, and we'll assuredly see it more in the Bad Batch because the opposite is true. The clones may be stormtroopers now, but they're still the same people as they were before. More importantly, they're still human. They get tired after long shifts and fail to recognize one face in a crowd, or they don't guard a ship or outpost well enough because they can't be bothered. These aren't even cases of stupidity. They're just regular old mistakes, the sort that happen all the time. The Seleucumai garrison was probably just off its game, which is understandable since the sort of jobs they were doing were not what they were trained for, or even what they'd been assigned to do just a few weeks prior. After all, clones on Seleucumai were probably the same clones that had been fighting there at the end of the war, meaning that they were from the 91st Reconnaissance Corps or unassociated unit. Those clones probably weren't the best equipped for the role of spaceport police. However, that explanation can't excuse everything. We can forgive the clones for not guarding things well enough, or not thoroughly searching the Bad Batch's ship, or failing to stop the Bad Batch from escaping. But really, shouldn't they have been able to recognize Cut? Sure, he was trying to be inconspicuous, but you can only hide yourself so well from people who literally share your face. Only one clone really noticed, and he didn't even sound all that sure about it. Why was that? Do these guys look at themselves in the mirror every morning and wonder if it's a window or some such? The simple answer is that you'd be surprised how easy it is to screw with the ability to recognize faces. Small changes to someone's facial appearance, like putting on a pair of sunglasses, can genuinely be an effective disguise in casual settings. And that's not just making up excuses. Look up the Clark Kent effect if you're interested in the gritty details of this very real phenomenon. Of course, Cut didn't put on a pair of glasses. He just grew some kick-ass sideburns and put on a hat. He didn't even grow out a proper beard. That alone wouldn't be enough, though it would likely help. Rather, our answer probably lies in the uncertainty of the clone that did recognize Cut. All of the clones that got a good look at Cut probably thought the exact same thing. Nah, it can't be. Deserters were a very, very rare thing in the Grand Army of the Republic, and nearly all of them were hunted down and killed. As far as these clones knew, the likelihood of them running into a deserter was very low, and thus, the prospect of a deserter was something they were inclined to doubt. Cut's sideburns and hat added enough uncertainty to this mix that it likely made the clones question their instincts on whether or not they actually recognized him. It's a stupid mistake to make for sure, but it's something we've all done at least once. There was also the fact that it was late at night and the clones probably just waited for their shifts to be over. Dealing with the deserter was probably a hassle the clones weren't in the mood for, inclining them to just give Cut the benefit of the doubt so they could get on with things. If they did pull Cut aside, it would have meant stopping the shuttle, giving them a lot of upset civilians to deal with later, and it also would have meant finding a place to detain him, finding a way to deal with his wife and kids, and filling out plenty of paperwork. Imagine doing all that nonsense at the end of your shift. And then imagine that the dude you've detained isn't even a deserter, just a lookalike. In all honesty, I'd just give the dude the benefit of the doubt in that scenario too. So that's our examination of how our beloved clones changed after Order 66. But what do you think? Do you have any entertaining stories about not recognizing people you probably should have? Let us know all that and how you rate the most recent episode of The Bad Batch in the comment section below. Anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you in the next video.